Did you all see a message pop up?
There was no message, but I see a red light.
Okay.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our monthly meeting of the Human Relations Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order and would like to begin tonight with a land acknowledgement. And this is the first time, but I hope certainly not the last time we do this, in recognition of and respect for Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of the land that we now call the city of San Diego. For millennia, the Kumeyaay people have been a part of this land. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the San Diego community and inhabitants of Ma'at Tapai, Kumeyaay territory, we acknowledge this legacy. We promote this balance and harmony, and we find inspiration from this land, the land of the Kumeyaay. And it was important to me that we do this, and I reached out to Commissioner Beltran, who actually shared that statement and wished she could be with us tonight, but happens to be recovering from surgery. I'd also like to wish everyone a happy Pride Month. Later this evening, we will have a presentation from San Diego Pride and have an opportunity to discuss our work in partnership with and in support of the LGBTQ+ community. And I would also like to recognize the work Vice Chair Canizales, Commissioners Detsky-Weil and Rizzo have put into updating our bylaws. This has truly been a labor of love. Maybe not love, but a labor certainly, in partnership with the City Attorney's Office and with Farhat, and you'll hear more about that later. Now I'd like to ask my colleagues on the commission to please keep your video on throughout the meeting to help remain as accessible as possible to our audience. I ask the same of the participating commission staff and presenters. I'd like to remind my fellow commissioners that you have a copy of our agenda, meeting minutes, and other background materials attached to the calendar appointment you received for tonight's meeting. And now I'd like to call the roll and officially welcome our newest commissioner, Tyler Duncan, to the Human Relations Commission. Thank you, Tyler, for hanging in there during what I know was a very long process through multiple mayors. We appreciate your persistence and are certainly glad you're here. And I saw a few clapping hands out there from other commissioners. All right,
Chair Hazen, yes. I'm so sorry. May I just pause right there? So before you roll call, I wanted to note Ricky Brown is on the webinar, but for some reason we're having technical difficulties and I can't promote her to panelist. So I just wanted to let you know she's here. And Ricky, if you can hear me, if you could leave the webinar and then rejoin, that might solve the problem. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's get started with the roll call. Commissioner Beltran. Commissioner Brown, we know is here, but will not be able to vocalize their presence. Commissioner Vice Chair Canizales. Here. Commissioner Detsky-Weil.
Here.
Commissioner Duncan.
I am here.
Commissioner Gillies.
Here.
Ooh, I like the enthusiasm. Commissioner Higa has shared he will not be able to join us tonight. Commissioner Mode.
Here.
Commissioner Molig.
Here.
Commissioner Murray Ramirez. Commissioner Purcell. Commissioner Razi Jafari.
Here.
Commissioner Rizzo.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas. No, I see you, but I didn't hear you. Commissioner Thomas is present.
Here.
Good, good. And Commissioner Zaragoza. Not here. And I would like to offer Commissioner Duncan a moment to share a few words if you'd like as our newest commissioner. And if not, no pressure.
No worries. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Tyler Duncan. I'm very excited and honored to join the City of San Diego's Human Relations Commission, promoting activities that foster understanding, respect, and inclusion while protecting basic human rights and civil rights is needed now more than ever. And I look forward to working with you all in advancing this mission.
Thank you. We are glad to have you. And also glad just to note that this commission has done a lot of advocacy to fill vacant positions and to ensure the full diversity of our city is represented to the greatest extent possible. And it is great to see over the last few months that we have added 2 new commissioners, which is great. And I think Farhat, do we have 1 additional vacancy, or is that everything?
We have 1 additional vacancy in District 4.
Okay, so commissioners, you can let everybody know, anyone you know in District 4, we want to encourage them to apply so we have a full commission. Before we move on with the meeting, I'd like to recognize staff and guests present. Joining us tonight are our Human Relations Commission staff liaison and the city's Immigrant Affairs Manager, Farhat Popal, Jen LaBarbera, the Education and Outreach Manager for San Diego Pride, and Reverend Gerald Brown, Executive Director of the Citizens Advisory Board on Police and Community Relations, who will also serve as this commission's new Executive Director. Now I'd like to have Farhat run down some of the guidelines for tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair Hazen. Good evening. In an effort to provide greater accessibility, members of the public may join the meeting as webinar attendees in order to provide virtual non-agenda and agenda comment in real time. Commissioners, city staff, and authorized presenters are attending the meeting as panelists, and the meeting will function for them identically to a typical Zoom meeting. Please note the buttons on the control bar at the bottom of the Zoom window. The camera icon is to activate your video, the microphone is to mute and unmute. Please remember to stay muted when you are not talking and to unmute yourself when you speak. If you are joining via phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. I will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number and then press *6 to unmute yourself. You'll also see the chat window button. Please keep your chat window open at all times as you will be using the chat to signal when you'd like to speak. We do recognize there's a hand raising function. However, we request that you type "speak" in the chat window for the record, and the chair will acknowledge requests in order. When wanting to make a motion, second a motion, or participate in a discussion, please type "speak" in the chat box and Chair Hazen will call on you in the order entered. Please refrain from using the meeting chat for anything other than signaling that you'd like to speak in order to comply with the Brown Act and public transparency. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will ask, as always, if I am missing something in the chat to please flag it for me. We'll now move on to our second item, non-agenda public comment. The public was invited to submit public comment on agenda and non-agenda items via web form accessible through the agenda and the Commission's website. Members of the public may also join this meeting as webinar attendees. If members of the public have submitted comments in writing via the web form, staff will read aloud public comment submitted per city public comment protocol. I'll now call on Farhat to read aloud any non-agenda public comment or call on any attendees who'd like to provide comment. Do we have any, Farhat?
There was no non-agenda public comments submitted for this meeting, but if there are members in attendance who would like to provide non-agenda public comment, please raise your hands now. And seeing none.
Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from May. Is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment on this item.
Okay, may I please get a motion to approve our minutes?
Motion to approve May's minutes.
Okay, so it was Commissioner Duncan. Is there a second?
I'll second. Commissioner Mullig.
Thank you, thank you. I'm trying to watch all the screens. Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Can we make a correction to the minutes, please? I think it was me that I seconded the minutes from the last time and my name is misspelled.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion stands to approve the minutes with the correction to Commissioner Detsky-Wiles' last name, the spelling of her last name. Okay, now, all in favor? Okay, and can't see everybody. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Our next item, I am very excited about, as I hope all of you are as well, is the introduction of our new Human Relations Commission Executive Director. We talked a lot about this at our last meeting, and I think probably the meeting before this. Before I share a few comments, I'm wondering, is there any public comment on this item, Farhat?
There's no public comment for this item submitted in advance. Would anyone in attendance like to provide public comments? Seeing none.
Okay. After long advocating for the appointment of an executive director to this commission for our bylaws and the municipal code, I am very pleased to share that the city has named Reverend Gerald Brown to this position. Everybody should have received his bio in our meeting packet. And before I turn the floor over to Reverend Brown to introduce himself, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Farhat for stepping into the unexpected role of staff liaison to the HRC, in addition to her full-time job as the city's immigrant affairs manager. I see lots of clapping. I know not everybody sees that on video, but I think we are all very appreciative. Farhat has been a responsive and collaborative partner in continuing to move the work of this commission forward, and I am grateful for all of your efforts, Farhat. While she will no longer be our staff liaison, I very much look forward to this commission continuing to partner with Farhat on immigrant affairs and implementing the Welcoming San Diego strategic plan. And before I turn things over to Reverend Brown, Farhat, any words from you?
I just wanted to say thank you for the kind words, for your graciousness, and for having me. Thank you.
Of course. Reverend Brown, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Madam Commissioner. I really look forward to working with all of the commissions. But before I say anything, I want to acknowledge that Director Matthew Gordon is in fact a part of this evening's meeting, and it is under his leadership that we will seek to work diligently to make sure that the commission is staffed, not only with myself, but to look for other staff members to come alongside and support the commission. Of course, Mayor Tarek Gloria wants to make sure the commission has everything that it needs to continue to be successful. It is an honor to work with the commission. I have in past years been a visitor and a speaker with the commission. I do in fact know some folks on the commission. My desire is always to uplift human rights for everyone in the city of San Diego and our state, as well as our nation and throughout the world. And so I am here and I make myself available 24/7. And because I am also the executive director of the Citizens Advisory Board on Police and Community Relations, we bring also with us the connection of every law enforcement agency in the county of San Diego to include both federal and also state and local law enforcement to the table. We have access, and we will be more than happy to invite them to come forward and to answer any questions that the commission has. I also have the privilege of working with Commissioner Tammy Gilley. In the past, we've stood side by side for human rights and dignity. And so I feel this is an honor to be here. And please keep me on task, and I will do my best to keep you on task. I realize that working with Farhat, I have some big shoes, as they would say, to fit, but she's been more than gracious in helping me to understand the process. And if there's anything that any commissioner needs, please let me know. And thank you for allowing me to be here today. And I'm the interim commission, so hopefully we will make that permanent at some point or another.
Very good. Well, thank you. We are glad to have you. And thank you. It's great to see. I'm glad you pointed out that Matthew Gordon is with us tonight also. I know poor Matthew heard from us a lot about how important it was to have an executive director. And I know he was working hard behind the scenes to make that happen. So thank you, Matthew, for your work on that front. We're going to move on to our next item, which is a Pride Month presentation. Is there any public comment for this item?
There is no public comment submitted in advance for this item, but I don't believe our speaker is currently on the webinar. So perhaps we can move on to the next one and we can come back. Perfect.
We will do that. So I will move on to welcoming San Diego, which Farhat will be presenting to us. Is there any public comment on this item?
There was no public comment submitted in advance, but if attendees of the webinar would like to provide live public comment, please raise your hands. And seeing none, I will go ahead and start the presentation.
And Farhat, do you mind? I'm wondering if I can provide just a bit of context for our newer commissioners about how we as a commission overlap with welcoming San Diego.
Absolutely.
So for newer commissioners, or maybe commissioners who have been on the commission a while and need a quick refresher, I wanted to provide just a bit of context about this item. The Human Relations Commission was very involved in the development of welcoming San Diego, and our former executive director played an active role in developing the plan in partnership with a large group of community stakeholders a few years ago. And I did want to point out that one item in the plan that this commission has long advocated for is the creation of an Office of Immigrant Advancement, which I did want to point out the county actually created something very similar just in the last couple of weeks. So I'm hoping we can follow their lead, not this year because our budget has been adopted, but a year from now. So we will continue working on that one. And before I turn it over to Farhat, just want to remind you that in your meeting packet, you have the Welcoming San Diego Strategic Plan Summary. Okay, Farhat.
Thank you very much, Chair Hazen. Also, did want to note in the meeting packet and in the agenda, there's a link to the full plan. I didn't want to add all 40 pages to your meeting packets, but you do have a link to it if you'd like to look at the full plan. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to get to talk to you all about the other hat I wear, which is the Immigrant Affairs portfolio here at the City of San Diego. As you all may or may not know, I started in that position in January of this year. And I'm really thrilled to be working to ensure that our immigrant, refugee, and asylee community has every opportunity to thrive in San Diego. I'm also grateful to my predecessor, Rita Fernandez, who is now Mayor Gloria's Director of Global Affairs, who really worked to build that foundation as the city's first immigrant affairs manager. So, as you all know, our comprehensive roadmap for this work is the Welcoming San Diego Strategic Plan, which sets a series of recommendations to advance the civic, social, and economic integration of immigrants, refugees, and asylees in support of our very vibrant region. Those recommendations cover everything from economic opportunity to education, inclusive access, things like language access and mobility, for example, civic engagement, and promoting safe and connected communities. In the year and a half that the Immigrant Affairs position has existed, we've built relationships with local community partners, intergovernmental entities, and national networks of organizations working on immigrant integration. So organizations like Cities for Action, Cities for Citizenship, Welcoming America. We've established welcoming stations at city library locations with resources for new San Diegans, partnered on Know Your Rights workshops. And we've also done a lot of policy advocacy and outreach and continue to serve as the city's liaisons for humanitarian responses to our region's migration challenges. As you also know, we have our work cut out for us. We know the disproportionate impact that COVID-19 has had on the immigrant, refugee, and asylee community, and just the need for really substantive support. And we also know that worldwide migration challenges will continue. but we're being innovative and creative in how we advocate both internally and externally for the community and for the organizations that provide very valuable services. How we can build a robust foundation at the city for programs and services in support of our 1 in 4 foreign-born residents. My overall goal for this year is really to identify what tangible things we can do now while working on strategic planning for the future. So as you can imagine, that includes having a clear understanding of the great work that's already being done and amplifying that work, identifying where there may be gaps and where the city may be uniquely positioned to fill some of those gaps. An example of some of those priorities include really serving as an ally and an advocate within the city infrastructure. So promoting an immigrant inclusion lens with regard to all city services that are being provided. So it's not just up to me as the immigrant affairs manager for the city, it has to be up to each and every city employee to use that lens when we're providing services to San Diegans. Some of that includes really keeping an eye on and evaluating our language access options, looking at potential federal funding for local programs. There's a couple pieces of legislation like the New Deal for New Americans that would really provide a lot of long-term support for immigrant integration programs at the local level. And so just keeping an eye on that, trying to advocate as much as possible. Promoting and amplifying existing programs. So really identifying opportunities where we can provide formal and informal support that could be serving as a connector, trying to enhance communication with the community and local partners, making sure that community-based organizations have me as a point of contact. They know that they can come to me if there's anything that they need, that the community needs, that the city may potentially be able to help with. And kind of making those connections, serving as that point of contact, I think is really important. And then continued relationship building to identify just innovative ways to partner. As Chair Hazen noted, we don't currently have a budget for immigrant affairs, but we are working on it. And in the meantime, that doesn't mean that we can't continue to be effective and efficient in the way that we use what we do have. And there's a lot that I think we can do as the city to really build those lines of communication, build that trust, and lay the foundation for when we can provide actual programs and services. One example of that could be as potential pathways for citizenship expand for varying populations. There are definitely ways that we can support naturalization, for example. And that's just one example. So all of that being said, please reach out anytime. You all know where to find me. You have my email address, and I look forward to working with the HRC moving forward to ensure our immigrant, refugee, and asylee community is treated truly with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. So happy to take any questions you might have.
I know I have a few questions, but are there any questions from other commissioners? Okay, seeing none. I'm curious, one of the things you mentioned, or I think you did, was around translation and access. And I'm curious, and I just don't know, at council meetings, what translation services are available? And I mean, and via Zoom in every setting, I should.
Yeah, so presently, if you look on the council agendas, I believe this started in April. On the second page, there's a paragraph that's translated into, I believe, 6 languages that provides an email address and a phone number that folks can call beforehand to request translation services. Unfortunately, that is only available before the meeting. So I don't know at this point whether we have the capability to provide live translation or not. That may depend on staff members in the room, if they're bilingual or not. But there are, within the council agenda itself, there are paragraphs in each language that provide guidance for how to request those services before a meeting. And something I've been thinking through just from the Welcoming San Diego perspective is, we have Welcoming San Diego social media platforms. And so prior to each meeting with a link to the agenda, I can copy and paste each of those on our social media platforms just to reinforce to folks that this is now an option that is available, and hopefully people take advantage of it, because it is important and it is a part of civic engagement in our Welcoming San Diego plan.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, so I know we participated in quite a few meetings recently organized by San Diego Unified. They do a very good job with translation services at all meetings that are open to the public and to the community. So there may be a model there that could be replicated in terms of making live translation available and, you know, at city council and at committee meetings, because I do think that issue around access is so critical, and making sure that it is, you know, in appropriate languages. So that's my first question. And then my other was around staff training. So you mentioned, right, that you're just one person, but the idea is for this to become part of the organizational culture within this city, that we are welcoming, we are inclusive, right? We are mindful of the needs of immigrants, including refugees and asylees. So is there any formal training program, and or what are you working towards?
Yeah, so as of now, I am not aware of any formal training programs, but I do see kind of part of my role being having those conversations with different city departments and really just telling them about the work of immigrant affairs, why it's important, maybe asking some questions, considerations that they should take into account, whether it's language access, whether it's other ways that they may be interacting with the public that would be specific to the immigrant community, and really just serving as a resource for them. They may have questions that they didn't really know who to ask, for example, and I am striving to be that point of contact for all folks. I also imagine some of this may tie into the future Office of Race and Equity and the work of that office, which, while not the same, is very much tied together. And so I imagine we'll be working together on that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for Farhat about welcoming San Diego or her work more broadly? Commissioner Rizzo?
Just a comment about the translation and interpretation services that we offer. You know, I could see that being helpful and useful for us in the discrimination and fact-finding and mediation arena. That comes up a lot. So just wanted to make that point for all of us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, thank you, Farhat.
Of course.
And is our guest presenter here yet?
No, unfortunately. I will go ahead and send a note, but if you want to go ahead and keep moving down the agenda, hopefully we will be there soon.
Sounds good. Our next item is our bylaws revision update. And while we aren't voting today to approve the new bylaws, it is an action item, and you'll hear, I believe, from Commissioner Detsky-Weil about the question we have, which is related to the timing of our elections for chair and vice chair. But I will turn things over to Commissioner Detsky-Weil, who is also joined by Commissioner Rizzo and Vice Chair Canizales.
You're on mute, Faye.
Oh, you're muted.
Silly me. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome tonight. You had a copy of the revised bylaws in your packet today, and you will see that I'm not going to go through every one of them, all the different parts, but you will see a lot was crossed out because a lot of what was in our bylaws before is already in the municipal code, and we do not need to repeat what's in the municipal code. So if anyone's interested in looking at the municipal code in comparison, we can provide you with a link to do that. Also, one of the biggest issues in the packet, there were some yellow boxes with the text, and I myself was not able to open those yellow boxes, so I can't remember what was in each of those boxes. Did anyone else, I don't know if anyone else had a chance to look at them and click on those yellow boxes, but I was not able to do so. So one of the main issues was the elections and officers. And when do we want to have elections? Whether we want them to be for the fiscal year or do we want them to be by calendar year? I think recently we had it by fiscal year and somehow that got moved. It used to be calendar year. And so that's a question, do we want to do this? Either one of those. So we'll be looking for your input on that, what you think would be the right thing to do. Also, what were some other issues? I don't know if anyone had any questions for me or for the committee about that. The bylaws. I'm pulling them up and looking through them as I talk to you right now.
So I had the same question that I think Farhat had on one of these on section 311, when it talks about special meetings. It says that special meetings may be called by the chair or the vice chair. Does the vice chair have the power to call a special meeting, or is that only if they're sitting in for the chair?
Well, that's a good question, and perhaps we need to clarify that.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the municipal code. It was my understanding that it was just the chair. And so the city attorney went through all of the changes that Commissioner Rizzo, Commissioner Detsky-Weil and I made originally. And so he went back through whatever was in the municipal code, basically he struck out. That might've been something we missed. So that's easy to go ahead and compare. And really what we wanted to do at this meeting is to provide everybody a copy to really take a look at it over the next 30 days and then be ready with those kinds of questions. So we can make any final changes and then adopt the bylaws at the next meeting in July. But that's a good question. I actually have the municipal code behind me. I'll look it up really quick.
And I think just to clarify from a process perspective, right, the request is to review, and then who would those comments be shared with? Vice Chair Canizales, if anyone has questions, comments, or final revisions, should they be shared with the three of you?
There's no reason they can send it to all three of us and we can look at them together.
Perfect.
And just to remind everyone that even though we may decide on what the bylaws are and approve them ourselves, it will have to go to the city council for final approval.
Thank you for that reminder. Any other questions about what's included and or any of those little comments that are noted with the yellow boxes? Commissioner Rizzo?
And I just wanted to add that I think the big takeaway on the bylaws, as we were speaking with Bill Gersten, the city attorney, was that there was so much in there that didn't need to be in there because it was duplicative of the municipal code. And so a lot of that bulk was taken out. And just so the commissioners know, there's so much more that can be added with policies and guidelines and other documents that can be basically working documents for the commission. Anything else that we want to generate over the course of months or years that don't need to be in the bylaws. So as you're reading through the bylaws, and if you care to look into the municipal code, that's all great. If you're wondering, what about committees? What about different things that we do on day-to-day bases? That can be different things for policies, guidelines, and that sort of thing. So just wanted to add that as one of the big takeaways that I think our subcommittee learned through this process, if that's helpful.
Thank you. And I know that related to that, a few years ago, standing rules were developed. And so it may be, outside of the bylaws, we may want to, work on some separate sort of processes or standing rules in addition. And I see Commissioner Detsky-Weil.
I was just going to say, if possible, can we put a link to the municipal code in the chat or so that people can access it if they need to?
So there's actually a copy of the municipal code in the meeting packet from, I believe, the May meeting. My only concern with including it in the chat is that it won't be accessible to the public. So we just want to make sure that we're using the chat only to signal if someone wants to speak. And speaking of that, Commissioner Gillies would like to speak.
Thank you. I just want to thank the commissioners that worked on this, because for me, like, the bylaws are, it is really difficult work getting through this and parsing it all out. And they're really important. You know, people don't understand the importance of that to making this commission work well. So just to thank you for all the hard work that I'm sure went into this.
Here, here.
Yeah, I will say that it's a great way to get to know your bylaws and how the workings of your commission. So for next year, if anybody wants to do that, that's great.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a many months process and many meetings. So yeah, I echo that appreciation. And it was, you know, one of our big goals this year was to take a deep dive into the bylaws and get them cleaned up. So I'm so glad to see that that's happening.
Thank you, Commissioner Canizales and Rizzo and Farhad for your help with this.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the fellow commissioners. And one of the reasons it took a little bit longer is because we started off as just commissioners, and then we had to kind of go through the whole thing all over again with the city attorney. And so all of the work we had already done, it was kind of being taken out. So that's just letting you know why it took so long. So but now we know for next time, just start with the city attorney. So
yeah, and I believe we're inviting the city attorney, Bill Gersten, to be here next month so that he can answer questions and help us resolve anything so we can approve them in.
Just one clarification, Bill Gersten is a deputy city attorney, not the city attorney.
Okay. Yes, and I think, and just for, I guess, for city staff, just a reminder, I do want to just echo what Vice Chair Canizales shared, which is when any commission is endeavoring to review and revise bylaws, that they need to do so in conjunction and coordination with the city attorney's office. So again, that we didn't know that, and there was work that was done independent of the city attorney's office. And then that work had to be done again. So just want to make sure that everyone is aware moving forward how it needs to be done so that time's not wasted. Okay, any other questions or comments on the bylaws before we take a vote around the timing of our elections? And Farhad, I can't recall, did I ask for public comment on this item?
I don't believe you did.
I don't believe I did. Is there any?
There was no public comment submitted in advance. If anyone on the webinar would like to provide public comment, please raise your hands now. Seeing none.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I will just add, we do have Jen here as well.
Terrific. Okay, so Commissioner Detsky-Well, do you want to share the options in terms of the timing of the elections and share what was, or I guess what is currently in the bylaws, and then the option we have?
Right. Well, what I was told is that our current bylaws are so far out of whack that they don't really apply. But the way we did it before is about a month or so before, we would establish a subcommittee of election subcommittee, and we would then
Can you remind everyone, sorry to interrupt, about what month that was previously, just so that we know the specific date so that we can decide on the new date?
Yeah, well, last time we did this was when you were elected chair, I believe. And so that was during the spring timeframe, is that right?
Right, so I believe we began in July, Vice Chair Canizales and I.
So that's what threw us kind of out of sorts.
Mm.
In the past, we would do it in December. We would form an election, a committee, a subcommittee of 2 or 3 people. Then we would call each commissioner and find out their interests in running for an office or position for chair or vice chair. And then we would present that slate of candidates at the, I guess it was the December meeting? No, the January meeting. And then we would also take candidates' submissions from the floor. And then we would vote on the 2 positions, and those people would take over the following February.
Got it. So I think the question and the item we need to vote on now is, so we had previous to this year operated on a calendar year schedule for the election of the chair and vice chair. It sounds like with elections held in January, with the new chair and vice chair starting in February. And then last year, and we don't know how this happened, but it happened in June. Well, I think in May, it was noticed that, or in May, we were told there would be an election in June. Nominations were called for. We held an election in June, and then the new chair and vice chair began in July. And so the question is, what would we like in terms of the timing and the date of the election codified in the bylaws? So again, so the choice is calendar year or aligned with the fiscal year. And just to note, the bylaws do say, and correct me if I'm wrong, bylaws committee, the bylaws do say that the chair and vice chair serve for 12 months for one 12-month term, and then may be elected for a second 12-month term. So in terms of mine and Vice Chair Canizales' service, we will have served for 12 months at the end of this month. Anything I missed, bylaws?
Sounds good. The bylaws also say that an officer will not serve more than 2 consecutive years in their position, even though they're elected every year.
Thank you. So my recommendation, I think, to be as aligned as possible with the intent of the bylaws, which is, I believe, for chair and vice chair to be elected for a 1-year term, is that we do hold an election. It won't be June because it is June now, but that we hold an election in July. And if there are a new chair and vice chair elected, they would start in August. So I'm wondering what everybody thinks about that. The other option would be that Vice Chair Canizales and I could stay on through December, and potentially a new chair or vice chair could start in January. Commissioner Detsky-Weil?
Well, I personally would like to hold you hostage and keep you on until your December. Okay. January. And the question I had is, because we're a little late for a fiscal year change, would you see this as a temporary change? I mean, a temporary situation?
I think that's a good question. So I like that. So I guess we have 3 options here on the table that we can vote on. So I think it's, do we want to reflect in the bylaws that elections will be held each June in alignment with the fiscal year, with chair and vice chair beginning in July? Or do we want it to be aligned with the calendar year with elections in December, chair, vice chair beginning in January? And with either of those options, we could vote to make an exception for this year because we are behind schedule. Either we would be behind, or if we went to the June or into the January, that would mean an 18-month term.
And I do recall that we had, what threw us off is that in the bylaws it said one thing, but really the last couple of years, the election had been on the fiscal year. And it just changed when there was a little bit of transition. And I know that when we were reviewing the bylaws, we thought it should be the fiscal year. That's when, that's what we were thinking. but it's really up to the commissioners at this point. Right now, the bylaws do say December, so we would have to make a change to the bylaws as of July, and then vote at the next meeting.
Thank you. And I see we have two, so Commissioner Gillies and then Commissioner Thomas would like to speak. Oh, Commissioner Gillies, no, that must be an old one. Commissioner Thomas, did you want to speak on this item? I may be late to the chat.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Canizales. That's what I was wondering about with the fiscal year. What is the benefit or what is the plus of aligning ourselves with that as compared to the calendar year? Is it budget related, or what would be the plus of aligning with the fiscal year?
I think it was just because that's what we had been doing as a commission for the last couple of years. And when we went back to start it, and I looked at the minutes, I realized, oh, at one time it was in December. And again, it was just because of what had been done in the past. I think that, I don't know that there's a benefit to the fiscal year. I think that if a commission was going to move, like a new chair was going to come in, I think January would make sense to me, as opposed to February, if we're going to change it. But right now it is December. That's what it says in the bylaws.
Can I ask also the same question of Farhat or Reverend Dr. Gerald Brown about how this would benefit us if it was in line with the fiscal year? What I'm thinking is that if you have a budget that's passed from this through the city and they give money for a certain, like the Office of Children, right? The new chair could then align our next 2 years or next year with that in mind. And so that's what I'm thinking would be a benefit, but maybe Farhat or Reverend could speak on that.
Reverend Brown, I might defer to you because you have more experience at the city than I do.
Thank you, Farhat. Usually it's left up to, for example, the board that I'm currently as the executive director, their chair starts in the calendar year. It has a lot to do with when we start to take a look at terms ending, because folks go from year to year. They also serve on an 8-year cycle. The calendar year kind of works out kind of better because you've got to get people through council for the next year. And so I can see both sides. It's really up to the decision of this board to make when you want to start. And I can also see, based upon last year and everything that took place during COVID, that you would in fact extend it out, allow for the chair to move all the way to December and then pick up again in the calendar year. That would be a benefit of some stability for the commissioners as you talk about moving forward with the budget that is already been approved. So again, it's up to you, but I know how other boards are working and electing their chair and vice chair.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And if we have no other questions, I would like to call for a vote. Does anyone have any additional questions about pros and cons of having an election in December and starting in January versus an election in May starting in, or in June starting in July? Commissioner Rizzo?
I just wanted to add a comment to Tootie's question, which was a great one. When we were talking with Bill Gersten about fiscal year as well, I recall him saying there was nothing that he believed bound us to any fiscal year based on anything that the commission did or was required to do, or that anything that we had going on with respect to this city. So just to add to everything that was already discussed, I recall that we did speak to him about that briefly.
Thank you. Okay, so it sounds like we could do either. So I will call for a vote, and I guess I will share the options and ask for everyone to raise their hand. So if you are in favor of updating the bylaws to reflect that nominations will be called for and noticed in, I guess, April, elections held in, no, I'm getting it wrong, in May, elections held in June, and chair and vice chair starting in July, please raise your hand. So in alignment with the fiscal year, if that is your preference, please raise your hand. Okay. If you are in favor of holding the nominating process and elections in alignment with the calendar year with new chair and vice chair starting in January, please raise your hand. All right. Okay. And I realized it looks like Vice Chair Canizales and I didn't vote. So we should do that.
I'm abstaining.
I am abstaining as well, and I did want to see the preference of the commission. Okay, so those are the options. I realized I didn't call for a motion, so I will do this all over again. So I would like to call for a motion. I guess the motion would be, so we have, now that we know the intent of the commission, I'd like if someone could make a motion for the January.
I'll make it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it. And then can I add a friendly amendment though?
Please.
That would be that we allow then the chair and vice chair to stay in place till the end of the year as continuing their first term, I guess, if that would be allowable under the municipal code, and perhaps we should check that.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Rizzo. I was going to add that also. So I think that's great.
The end of which year?
Well, so what I understood Reverend Brown was telling us to consider was that due to COVID, we would extend this term through the end of the year, and then and that would essentially be the first your first term. I would also like to check that through the municipal code.
Okay. So that sounds great. So is that clear to everybody? The motion is that elections would be held in alignment with the calendar year, and for this year only, an exception would be made where the chair and vice chair would serve an 18-month term instead of a 12-month term.
Madam Chair, I would recommend two separate motions. One for the chair, vice chair extension to the end of the year, and another recommendation for the change to the bylaws for the nomination of or appointment of the vice chair, election of the vice chair and chair. Just to be clear. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so then let's take can we retract the amendment and take? Yes. Okay. So Commissioner Thomas's original motion stands. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And I am in favor. That motion carries. And Commissioner Canizales, did you vote on that?
I'm in favor.
You are in favor. Okay. Reverend Brown?
Madam Chair, I know I've got my hand up there and you probably can't see it right there in the corner.
No, I can't.
So I'll change my hand so you can see it. But I would ask that, just for the official record, that you do a roll call.
Okay.
And that way that you're able to track who did in fact vote, who did in fact abstain.
Okay. Do you or Farhat have the list, or would you like me to do that?
I have the list.
You have the list?
I could get it.
Yes.
I'll go ahead. So let's go ahead, and if you can vote by when I call your name. Let's see who's here. Commissioner Brown. Are you in favor?
He's muted.
You're muted, Commissioner Brown. We'll move on to Vice Chair Canizales.
Yes.
Commissioner Detsky-Weil.
Yes.
Commissioner Duncan.
Yes.
Commissioner Gillies.
Yes.
Commissioner Higa. Not here. Commissioner Mode left. Commissioner Molig.
Yes.
Commissioner Razi Jafari.
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
And Commissioner Brown, are you back with us? Okay, and I vote yes as well. So the motion carries. And then we're looking for a second motion per Reverend Brown's recommendation. Is there someone that would like to make that second motion around extending the current term?
I move to extend the current term till the end of the year, the regular calendar year.
No.
I second.
Okay, I will go ahead and do a roll call.
Wait, can I add though that do we know that that's acceptable pursuant to the Muni Code, and do we need to check that?
I'm wondering if we can, I think that's a really good point. I'm wondering if we can vote and then check, and based on the outcome of what we hear from the city attorney's office, we will know if in fact the vote can be.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I would just say that it's that we vote, and then as long as it's not counter to the municipal code.
Okay, so I can't remember who made the motion. I'm wondering if we can amend the motion to reflect that.
Yes, I amend the motion. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Now I will ask for a vote. Commissioner Brown. Vice Chair Canizales. Oh, I
said yes.
Okay.
Oh, I just had to.
Commissioner Detsky-Weil.
Yes.
Commissioner Duncan.
Yes.
Commissioner Gillies.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Mode. Oh, not here. Commissioner Molig.
Yes.
Commissioner Razi Jafari.
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. And thank you for letting us really talk through that process, and really appreciate everybody's feedback. Now we will go back to the item we skipped over, which is our Pride Month, or our Pride presentation. And I see Jen is here with us. And Jen, I want to make sure I pronounce your last name correctly. So tell me, how do you pronounce it?
Basically make it as white as possible. So it's just La Barbara.
Okay. Jen La Barbara is here with us from San Diego Pride. Jen, take it away.
All right. So what I was charged with when y'all invited me here, thank you for inviting me here to the Human Relations Commission meeting tonight. I'm really grateful to be here with all of you. It's great to see my good friend Kathy, although currently not in the frame. Now it's just her beautiful fake bookcase behind her. So thank you again for having me here. My name is Jen. My pronouns are they and she. And I work as the Education and Advocacy Manager at San Diego Pride. So my role is somewhat involved in the Pride Week that everyone knows about, but my job is actually more busy usually throughout the rest of the year. So what I was asked by the chair and by Farhat to talk about tonight is the history and work of San Diego Pride, and how the Human Relations Commission can work with us to advance LGBTQ priorities, LGBTQ equality, respect, and pride, equality, and respect for the LGBTQ communities here in San Diego, and also in the state, and also nationally, and also globally. So first, I know that a lot of you are probably somewhat familiar with the history of the Pride movement, but I am going to go through just a smidge, and I just have really just a few pictures, and then I'll just come back to my face. But I'm going to try and share screen. I think I'm allowed to do that. So hold on. So interview. Apologize. I should have gotten this ready beforehand. There we are. Okay. So, nope, my computer is not having it today. So I'm just going to talk to you about the history of the LGBTQ movement and history of the Pride movement. So, so the history of the Pride movement, we usually trace back to Stonewall, right? So this was when the LGBTQ community rose up against state-sanctioned police violence for one of many times that we have done so. So Stonewall was a gay bar, is still a gay bar in New York City. And on June 28th of 1969, there was, per usual, a police raid of that bar. The police regularly raided gay bars. It was illegal in most states to actually serve alcohol to LGBTQ people because being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or queer was considered a crime. It was considered a mental illness. And so serving somebody with a mental illness was also illegal in a lot of places around the country. Thus, many police raids on gay bars, right? So 1969, June 28th, police yet again raided the Stonewall Inn. They'd done this multiple times. And something was different though in 1969. And the patrons of that bar, primarily led by trans women of color, drag queens, and butch lesbians, fought back in a really big way. The riot, the uprising that followed from that lasted for 3 whole days. And then in the years following, starting in 1970 and continuing on till today, many places around the country and around the world commemorate that time in 1969 as with what have now become our Pride festivals and parades, right? But in those early years, we're really back in our roots, right? Which was in protest and in marches for our rights, and not even just for our rights, just for basic respect as human beings, right? So that said, so 1970, right, was actually when San Diego had its first gay inn. So we didn't have our first Pride March until 1974, but in 1970, the Gay Liberation Front that had organized itself at San Diego, what is now San Diego State University, had its first gay inn, which was basically just like a big gay picnic in the park, which honestly sounds pretty delightful. And then just, a few places where LGBTQ people could be together and in those numbers, right? Because in San Diego, we were also being harassed, right? This wasn't just a New York thing. This wasn't just a San Francisco thing. There were still cross-dressing ordinances on the books in San Diego that criminalized anybody who had too many pieces of the wrong gender clothing on, right? And they could be arrested. And it was still perfectly legal in California to lobotomize gay men, which happened in many, many times at Atascadero, up a smidge north of us. So, right, this is the context within which our current Pride exists. So 1974, we saw the very first Pride March in San Diego, which was organized without a permit. So we don't have like a paper trail of it, right? But 1974 was the first march, and 1975 was the first like march/parade where they did actually seek and get a city permit for that march down the streets. In the early years, just to kind of continue to give a little bit of context around what LGBTQ folks kind of went through. In the first few years, many people, or a number of people in those marches and parades, wore paper bags over their heads because it was perfectly legal to and expected to lose your job, lose your kids, lose your housing if you were, publicly identifiable in these marches and these parades. So, right, so this is the reality within which LGBTQ folks are kind of organizing and building our power, building our movement in the late 1960s, early 1970s. Not to say that we hadn't been doing a lot of this stuff beforehand, right? LGBTQ folks, have been around for millennia, will continue to be around for millennia. Being lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, or queer didn't just happen in 1969. We've been around forever. And it was also Stonewall itself, right, became this tinderbox moment. And there had been multiple kind of fighting back against those police raids on and police violence against trans and queer folks for years. That happened in San Francisco. Fights back happened in LA and in other smaller kind of usually forgotten about places in the rest of the country. So 1969, though, was that tinderbox moment, sparked this big pride movement. And now we see prides happen in, we have at last count over 2,000 prides that happen throughout the world. And that is, and June is still used throughout the world, even though, right, that happened specifically in the US, it's still used throughout the world to kind of commemorate that, that moment when the LGBTQ community really came together in a beautiful way. So we now have what have become these big parades, big festivals. I can tell you that when I was growing up, seeing 350,000 people in the street, which is what San Diego's Pride Parade usually gets, seeing 350,000 people in the street supporting and cheering on LGBTQ folks. I'm not that old, but growing up, like, that was absolutely like unfathomable to me. The prospect of actually being able to marry my partner someday. I haven't actually proposed to her yet, and she is across the table from me, but I will, right? And I can propose to her and I can marry her. And that was also unfathomable to me when I was growing up, right? So we have made incredible progress. And I also want to be super clear that the amazing progress we have made is not nearly enough. It is still perfectly legal in 28 states in the US to discriminate against LGBTQ folks in housing and public accommodations. We don't have any federal protections at this point. It's patchwork state by state, right? And the enforcement of that is also pretty patchwork, right? It is illegal in California to fire somebody for being trans or to fire somebody for being gay. It's actually illegal across the entire country as of last summer, thanks to a Supreme Court decision. But it still happens. It still happens here in San Diego. It still happens around the country. And that is because there's plenty of other reasons somebody can give to fire you. Be like, oh, well, you just weren't good with the customers. When really what they really mean is you're trans and that makes me uncomfortable and I don't want you working here, right? But parsing that out and being discriminated against still for being true to our gender identities, true to our sexual orientations, is still something that happens throughout the country, right? There's that difference between policy and lived reality. And there is, so two big federal things that I do just want to call out real quick is number one is the Equality Act, which has been passed by the House, is currently being held in the Senate because the Senate is not about to pass it, right? And so we're still, putting a lot of pressure on that, but that would bestow upon the entire country those non-discrimination protections that 28 states currently lack, right? So it would make it kind of just the law of the land rather than, oh, whoops, I crossed over into Arizona. Oh, well, there goes half of my rights, right? So no shade on Arizona, a little shade on Arizona. The other big federal thing that is coming literally any day now, like I have my alarm set for 7 a.m. tomorrow to check, is a Supreme Court decision that will decide whether or not it is legal for entities that take taxpayer dollars to discriminate against LGBTQ folks. So that is the Fulton v. Philadelphia case. Encourage you to look it up, see what's going on. San Diego will have our own response to it once that decision comes down. And per Supreme Court, we have no idea when that will happen. Could be tomorrow, could be the end of June, who knows?
And Jen, I'm just looking at the time and first want to say thank you for everything you've shared and thank you for being here tonight. I think I'm curious, as you think about what we can be doing locally, if you might want to share a few words on that, and then I'll open it up for commissioners to share any thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And oh, I do have ideas. I asked our executive director, like, hey, is there anything that you want me to make sure that I bring up to the Human Relations Commission? And they sent me a very long message back of things. So yes. And Tootie, to your question on intersectionality and the LGBTQIA community, you know, when we're thinking about, we've had this huge racial reckoning in the past year, right, across the country and also here in San Diego. Our own police department beat up a homeless Black man in La Jolla. I don't know that that would have happened had that person been housed and or had that person not been Black, right? So there is, as we are thinking about that racial reckoning that's happening around the country, that is not separable from the LGBTQ community. We are Black, Brown, Indigenous, Asian, people of color, and we are also, as LGBTQ folks, also disproportionately impacted by police violence, by over-policing, and by biased policing. The data is super clear on this. Same with people with disabilities, especially visible disabilities. And that's not just like national data, right? That's San Diego PD data. That's San Diego Sheriff's data. That's been presented a million different times, a million different ways. Most recently, the Union Tribune and the Campaign Zero report that the ACLU had commissioned. So, so that's like, you know, I think when I think about intersectionality and the LGBTQIA community, I can't separate them, right? Like there's no separation in my brain because LGBTQIA issues are racial justice issues, are immigration justice issues, are policing and violence issues, right? They are all connected because LGBTQIA people are everywhere. So specifically to San Diego,
yes.
So there's like one, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. One is as far as like the data collection of sexual orientation and gender identity data goes, pretty non-existent, right? The city, it was only a few years ago that the city started tracking rape statistics within same-sex relationships. Prior to that, it had just not been tracked at all, right? It was just not considered to be something that was tracked. Perhaps it was in there, but we had no way of parsing it out based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The city forms are actually still not updated to include non-binary folks, even though in California, we've had a law on the books for years now, and it's been, what, 4 years now, I believe, that we've had a law on the books that allows folks to have that X gender marker on our driver's licenses, allows us to have that state recognition of being non-binary. We go to fill out a form for the city and it's still either column A or column B, either male or female. And so non-binary folks are fully erased there, right? So there's one specific form that I remember that our organization had to fill out that was asked our staff to identify how many of our staff are what gender. There was no non-binary option. A third of our staff is non-binary, and like we're not reflected on that form.
That seems pretty fixable,
right? I would think so.
2, 3 more.
Yes. So the another one is again about sexual orientation and gender identity. As far as like, what is the LGBTQIA emphasis? If we're thinking about intersectionality, we have that new Office on Race and Equity, which is excellent, great. Is that going to be intersectional? Are LGBTQIA issues going to be prioritized within the Office of Race and Equity? I know we're still working on hiring our ED for that, but I'm hopeful that that will be an issue that is prioritized. And then we also just got our arts and culture funding restored, which is super exciting. Thank you to the City Council for restoring that. And the Arts and Culture Commission does fund many LGBTQ organizations, but they don't really have an emphasis in that, in the way that they have an emphasis, and it's like explicit emphasis on funding funding BIPOC arts and culture organizations. That is an express thing. It is not really expressly stated in the Arts and Culture Commission and in the funding that's provided for arts and culture to fund LGBTQIA folks. And as the single largest event in San Diego, larger than Comic-Con, not that it's a competition, but we do win, right? Like it is, we have arts and culture experiences and performances that really need to be funded and really need to be really well supported. And I think that's it.
Thank you. And I appreciate the really specific calls to action and requests about what we can do within the city. And I would ask this commission or each commissioner, to the extent that any of these issues are particularly important to you, I am going to offer up Pride as a partner potentially, since they've brought these issues to us to partner on. And I know, for me, one that stood out is that forms have not been updated in accordance with state law as it relates to having a non-binary option. And so if we can work together on that, Jen, I think that would be terrific. And it looks like Commissioner Thomas would like to speak. Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you, Jen, for sharing all of that. And we really appreciate Pride's involvement in moving these issues forward. There are a lot of other LGBTQIA organizations that share a different aspect also of gay life in San Diego. And I think that if we're going to form a partnership, we should hear from a bunch of them, and maybe it's a council that we put together that, kind of brings all of these issues together. The issues of Black and brown people within LGBTQ context is very different than our general LGBTQ community here in San Diego. We are only 17 miles from the border, but if you were to visit one of our Pride festivals, that is very, I don't want to say played down, but it isn't a major part. Whereas if you go to the Long Beach Pride, it's a major part of what they're doing. And so I think that, I don't want to miss anybody's voices in this. Another one is homeless LGBTQ people and what they go through and what the specific needs are of that community too. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And if I can help in any way, I would like to help line up some, different groups to speak.
Thank you. And I really like the idea, Commissioner Thomas, of having maybe a small task force, or at least convening, maybe it's one meeting of a group. I know I did want to flag, and I know you know very well that the mayor has just created an LGBTQIA advisory group. So maybe it is in partnership or through that group that we can work on advancing some of these issues. The other thing I wanted to note is that we did invite the center to present to us tonight as well, and that they were unable to attend. And I, of course, recognize there are many more organizations as well and other groups. But of course, we couldn't invite every single one to this meeting, but I love the idea of bringing everyone together, potentially as a task force or a committee. I am noticing in the chat, wanted to just elevate Commissioner Brown's voice, who agreed with what was just shared. And then I see Commissioner Mola, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I want to come back around to that piece of, I love the idea of partnering with, more orgs, not just San Diego Pride, of course, but more orgs doing this. If we go back a number of months, we had conversations around really pushing out this piece around pronoun usage within the city. And we provided, Trans Family Support Services provided one training. And so this piece around paperwork isn't just around paperwork, right? It's not just adding a line to all the forms. It's getting that training out. It's getting people comfortable, and that visibility makes a difference. Our organization recently did a training with the County Health and Human Services Organization. And before we did the training, when their flyer first went out, we got, and I've been given permission to share the story. We got an email from an employee in that department thanking us for presenting this, because they identified as non-binary and they were afraid to come out at work because they were afraid how much educating they would have to do, and would people even honor and respect their pronouns. And then here we were coming in doing this training so they didn't have to do it. So, you know, some of these asks seem like, oh, those are small things, but there's such a greater piece around it that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of.
Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I agree. I mean, it represents a big shift in cultural change, certainly within the city. And I did want to note before we wrap up this item that Jen mentioned in the chat that there is the Community Leadership Council at the center, which convenes almost every LGBTQIA+ serving organization. So maybe it is through that council, we could work on advancing some city-specific issues. So I would ask if there's anybody who doesn't currently attend that council and is interested in representing so any commissioners interested in representing the Human Relations Commission on that council and reporting back to us, that would be great. And I
am on that council.
Perfect. So well, now you are our liaison. You've been given another title. So let us know if there are opportunities to work together, and please let them know what we discussed tonight. And we'll move on. Again, thank you, Jen, for presenting to us, for sharing with us. We appreciate you and wish you a happy Pride Month. And we will move on, get back to item 9. Item 8, I believe, actually, on hate crimes and violent extremism, our monthly report from Commissioner Gillies.
Hi, thank you. Very short report. I had an update from the DA's office this morning, and the numbers are that 29 hate crimes have been referred to the district attorney's office so far this year. 19 were actually filed. 10 of those were around race. That is, one was anti-Asian. And I'm just going to use the terminology that the DA's office uses, so where you know where that's coming from. So one is anti-Asian, 5 were anti-Black or African-American, 4 were anti-Hispanic. So those were 10 based on race. The other one was based on religion, and that was an anti-Jewish crime. So the others are still in process. So that's what's happening from the district attorney's office. And I would just share from an ADL perspective, if I might, that we have seen anti-Semitism increasing over the past 30 days across the country, up 75%, specifically related to the conflict in the Middle East. And I want to just share with this group, because you are all my fellow commissioners, that we all can have disagreements with what's going on in the Middle East, and we all can have different feelings about the policies of Israel. But when American Jews are being attacked on the streets of Los Angeles and New York, just because they're Jews, that's anti-Semitism. That's holding a group of people responsible for what a foreign government is doing. And I just, people have a hard time sort of separating these things out. So I appreciate you letting me just take a moment to share what that looks like from my perspective. So that's it for now. Thank you, Chair, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillies, and thank you for taking a moment to really reflect and share with everybody that there has been this spike in anti-Semitism, and really making clear, as I would like to as well, that that is anti-Jewish hate, right? You talked about other groups that are being persecuted, and anti-Semitism is anti-Jewish hate. It is not anti-Israel. It is against a specific group of people. So I appreciate you calling that out. We will move on to our next item, Oh, and I apologize. I forgot to ask if there was any public comment on this item.
There was no public comment submitted in advance. If webinar attendees would like to provide public comment, please speak now. Seeing none.
Thank you. And our next item, I will turn it over to Vice Chair Canizales to share about external relations and some of the things that she has been working on and planning.
Yes, so related to Commissioner Gillies' presentation, I was really taken back by some of the numbers in one of her first presentations. And I know I talked about this idea of creating an annual, year-long campaign against hate and violence. And as Commissioner Hazen and I have been meeting with some organizations outside of the commission, specifically the Department of Justice, who have resources and are seeing the violence as a public health issue, and really want to connect with organizations in San Diego. We also recently met with a gentleman, Steve Slocum, who has also started an organization who has volunteers who really want to get involved. He is specifically interested in the violence against the Middle East and really trying to understand some of the Middle East issues that come up and trying to bring folks together. And so after having conversations with a few of these organizations, I thought about our calendar, which I shared with all of our commissioners a couple months ago. And we discussed the idea of possibly having on a monthly basis, whether it's a presentation here at the HRC, a reception, a talk at the library. It would be something related to really bringing an awareness of these issues. And I think one of the things that we had discussed with Steve was this idea of making sure that we have the right people in the room. And some of it might just be networking and creating a collaboration. When we were just talking a little while ago about all these organizations working together, it's really just sharing information, but really with the focus on what are we doing with this issue of violence and hate, and how can we bring understanding, and sometimes just bringing people together. So I did put in the chat the calendar, and the idea is to have a kind of a planning committee meeting to see where we could take the idea of having something on a monthly basis. And what I would ask is that any commissioner who's interested in spearheading, whether it's a talk, a reception, a gathering, or just having somebody present at one of our meetings, that you sign up for a month. It could be more than one, and pick, I had Women's History Month, I had San Diego Pride on there. And so everybody has access to the calendar. You're all editors if you just want to plug your name in. And then we are planning an initial meeting on July 16th. I'll put the information on the chat. If you're interested, let me know. I will invite you to the meeting. I know that we have a representative already from Commissioner Gillies' organization, and also a few other folks have expressed an interest. And I don't know, Shane, if you wanted to add anything about our conversation with Steve and the idea that we came up with of having some sort of kickoff in September, and it might just be bringing all of these different groups together. Because I really think that with COVID, we've all been separated, and now we might have the opportunity to kind of come together. And if the least we do is do some networking, then at least we're moving in the right direction. And maybe next year we add on a little bit more. But I think to start, this might be a good way to just kind of get this going. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
I just want to say thank you. I think it's great. And I think a lot of this is, depends on process. And so really want to call out Vice Chair Canizales for putting together this calendar. I see that there are people in it right now adding details. So thank you. And I think if we can each, take a piece, that we can really do something great. And the other thing I shared in the chat is that the city of LA recently launched an LA for All campaign to combat hate. So there may be some things that we can learn from them. I think theirs is very much focused on utilizing media, public relations. So maybe we could also see if the city's comms team would like to work with us on this and maybe elevate this within the city and maybe in partnership with the mayor's office.
Yes, I do have a list of organizations, and I was going to reach out to Danelle to try to get her involved, to try to get as many organizations as possible to participate in whatever we end up doing. Yeah.
Perfect.
So, and then the second thing on the agenda is that I did meet with Commissioner Murray about the dinner. And I suppose the first question is, are we able to move forward? Do we want to move forward with the dinner in November? Or
sorry to interrupt. I'm just wondering for our new commissioner and for our new executive director, if you could clarify what the dinner is, a little context.
Sure. This is an awards dinner that has been held, I don't know how many years, but the last one was in 2018, I think. It's on the website, and it's a commissioner to recognize people in the community that have gone above and beyond in specific categories, and the categories are on the website. I can go ahead and link it. There isn't a lot of other information. It does have the recipients from the last 2 years, and I was involved in the last one, but I am not able to chair this time. And so anybody who would like to work with Commissioner Mary Ramirez, if you could let me or Farhat, or I guess let somebody let me know, because
not Farhat, Reverend Brown.
I'm sorry, I forgot. Because I think if we're going to move forward with it, we need to start, working on it pretty quickly. So,
is there any interest from anyone? And I don't know if any of our newer commissioners are interested in working on this special awards event. And it really is a wonderful night, bringing the community together, recognizing and highlighting the contributions of our really beautiful and diverse community. I see Commissioner Brown would be interested. Thank you. Okay, so I think if we can have Commissioner Brown and Mary Ramirez working with our executive director, I am hopeful that we can get this dinner back on track and have an awards event again. Oh, and I see Commissioner Duncan is also interested. Thank you. But that we can again have this event. We typically do it. Is it November or December?
It's been in November, late October, November.
Yeah, so it's a great way to end the year and really show our appreciation for the community. All right, so thank you. So we have a group that will be working on it, and I would say, Vice Chair Canizales, would you, I know you will not be chairing this, but would you convene the group and then identify a chair at that first meeting?
I sure will. I'd be happy to do that.
Wonderful. So those commissioners that have volunteered, you will hear from Vice Chair Canizales, and hopefully one of you will step up as the chair. All right, any questions on external relations? Okay, we are back to, so our next item is around the process for election of a chair and vice chair. And this was inserted into the agenda with the assumption that we would be having an election next month, but we are not. So we will, assuming what we have voted on is aligned with the municipal code, we will skip over this item for now. Does that sound right, Reverend Brown and Farhat and our bylaws committee? Okay, I see thumbs up. We'll go with that. And head nods. Thank you. All right. Then I will move into my chair's report. And before I share, I do want to encourage everyone, all of our commissioners, to please share what you have been up to over the last month and any issues that you care about that you want to make sure all of us know about. This is that time to be able to reflect what you are working on. I wanted to let everybody know that last week we had convened by Matthew Gordon, who was with us earlier, the Director of Boards and Commission, our first Boards and Commissions chairs meeting, where the chairs of all of the city's boards and commissions came together. I don't know that that has ever happened before, but it was really great to hear what is going on across boards and commissions, and also to hear from the city what their plans are to streamline processes and make things run more smoothly. One of the things we heard is there'll be a new website and portal, online portal for boards and commissions with information about appointments and vacancies and what each board and commission is working on. And that should be launched, I believe, the end of this month or early next month. So everybody can look out for that. I see a question, which is, are we now under boards and commissions again? I don't know, because I don't know. So we are under now Reverend Brown, and I don't know where he falls in the org chart. Are you under boards and commissions?
Yes, yes, Commission Chair. I am up under boards and commissions, and mainly from the mayor's office. And
wonderful.
So, yes.
Thank you. I know we've bounced around. Thank you, Commissioner Detsky-Weil, for asking that question. All right. The other thing I wanted to share, and I know everybody received information from Farhat this morning about this, but I am really excited that the Office of Child and Youth Success in the city has been established. This is something that we as a commission advocated for. We heard about the office, we deliberated, we sent a letter of support. I also sent my own letter of support as the chair of this commission, not representing this commission, and shared a quote for a press release a few weeks ago. And I'm just delighted to see that this office will be formed. The new city budget includes $350,000 to launch the office in the new fiscal year. I have a couple other items. So my favorite topic, the Office of Race and Equity, which seems to be an evergreen topic because, as you may recall, this office was created with the adoption of the 2021 budget a year ago, and there have still been no staff hired or any work done to advance the office's purpose in the last 12 months. Though there is groundwork, we are working to hire somebody to lead that office. The office hasn't officially launched. I did check in with Councilmember Montgomery's office about this. As you recall, she presented to us a few months back, and I wanted to see, get an update from them. They shared that in the new budget, there is approximately $3.8 million for the Office of Race and Equity. So that will be sustained moving forward. And there are 3 budgeted FTE positions, a department director and 2 program managers. So that's unchanged from the last year or from the current year's budget. And there's also $3 million from the Community Equity Fund, which was established this year, that'll carry over to support programs and projects in the community next year. And also in terms of the hiring, it's taken longer than expected to hire the new Chief of Race and Equity to lead the office. but the city is hopeful that based on the qualified candidates they've received and where they are in the process, that someone can be hired and begin in early in the fiscal year 2022. So potentially July or August. I also want to update everyone on communities of concern. I shared last month that there was a press release around the mayor's May revise that included the term communities of concern. We had advocated with Sandag about the issue and discussed, because it was not an action item on last month's agenda, we could not as a commission send a letter to the city, but I was able to send a letter as chair of the commission to the mayor's office, which I did. So following last month's meeting, I shared a letter requesting that the city no longer use the term communities of concern to describe historically under-resourced communities when describing budget and planning priorities, because as we've discussed previously, we believe the term is stigmatizing and reinforces negative perceptions about historically under-resourced neighborhoods. I received a positive response from Council Member Von Wilpert's office and have followed up with the mayor's office, but haven't yet heard back about any intended next steps on that. And then lastly, I wanted to share that I participated in a really wonderful new initiative a few weeks ago called the Civic Engagement Initiative. It's a new partnership of the Burnham Center for Community Advancement, the National Conflict Resolution Center, and UCSD Extension. And I believe I saw Commissioner Higa there as well. And from June to December, the initiative is going to bring together 200 San Diego residents representing the economic, cultural, and political diversity of our region to create actionable solutions that are inclusive, sustainable, and practical. And I thought it was a really wonderful convening that really brought together a diverse and broad base of San Diegans. So if you're interested, let me know and I can tell you more about that. That is my report. I will open it up to commissioners to share their reports now. And I'll go ahead and call you by name. Commissioner Brown. Anything to report?
Just a little bit about the LGBT Advisory Board. We had one meeting, and at this point, we're just, they're really focusing on the rental assistance, that money that San Diego Housing Commission has and has only been able to fund 2%. So they're looking for ways to find out how we can do outreach to get that money spent, because they definitely don't want to go back to Biden. President Biden, I'm sorry. Yeah. So that's what it is. So hopefully we can come up with some strategies to get that money spent. That's all.
Thank you, and I appreciate the update. And Vice Chair Canizales.
I don't have a report other than I do want to thank the commissioners who have asked to participate, and for the other commissioners, when you have a chance, please take a look at the calendar and see if there are events that need to be filled in, or an area that you're interested that isn't on here. This is just a work in progress. It's ours. There are a lot of different groups and organizations and issues out there. So, please feel free to add as much as you'd like. And I said the meeting was on the 16th. It's on the 21st. July 21st at 2 o'clock, and I will send you the Zoom invite and the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Detsky-Weil.
I attended the San Diego Immigrants' Rights Consortium on Monday, and that's held once a month on a Monday. And so far it's been virtual. And I just wanted to report some things about the border. Apparently there are about 2,000 or 3,000 people still living at the border, and they are being subjected to all sorts of fraud and being taken advantage of. People are asking them for money so they can move to the head of the line or whatever. There are still a lot of children down there, and at our convention center, We still have about 600 to 700 children. And the convention center will be closing on July 15th. And my question was, where will they go? And the answer was, well, we're hoping they won't be there any longer. So they're still trying to work at finding their families. So far, 2,000 children have been reunited with families, which is wonderful. We have a way to go though. So I would like to know if anybody's interested in attending on a regular basis. If you are, please let me know and I can provide you with the person to contact. Erin Ciaramato, Farhad, what's
Grassi.
Grassi is the
I'm so
last.
bad with names. I mess up everybody's name. It's just my thing, I guess. But it's a wonderful group of different organizations that come together and work together. And so that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to just emphasize or maybe share for newer commissioners. So historically, we have always had a liaison from this commission who represents us and reports back to us from the Immigrant Rights Consortium. So again, if there is anyone that is particularly interested in immigrant rights issues, I would ask that you serve as our commission's liaison to that group and attend those meetings on a monthly basis. And again, you can let Commissioner Detsky-Weil know if you are interested. Let's see, next we have Commissioner Duncan. Anything to report?
Yes, hello everyone. I did want to go ahead and just remind everyone that this upcoming June 19th is Juneteenth. Then NAACP San Diego branch will be celebrating that Cooper Family Freedom Festival. We encourage everyone to come out and stop by our booth as well and enjoy just the festivities of the day. The Autism Society of San Diego has also just recently opened applications for our Autism's Got Talent. Very excited to be hosting this online competition and encourage you also to stand by some of our sponsors like Mainly Mozart, who have a variety of activities and events happening this month.
Terrific. And do you mind sharing links to both of those so that everybody has access?
Yes, will do.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillies.
Thank you. I wanted to share that October 10th, we are having our Back Again in Real Life, our Walk Against Hate. And Reverend Brown kicked us off last time we were in person for that amazing event. And the part that I want to share with the commission is that part of the walk is that we have a diversity expo. And any organization that would like may have a booth. And it's basically for the community to walk around and kind of know what resources are available, what different organizations do. There's no charge. We get some sponsorships in order to do this. So I'll put out some more information, but it's great. It's like a resource fair in a way for the community to see all the amazing, and I know so many of you have and are connected with great organizations. So sometime I will send to Reverend Brown or the appropriate person the information, and I hope that you'll join us to walk and also take a booth. So,
and remind, when is it again?
It's 10/10, October 10th. It's in the morning at Liberty Station, and we're really excited to be back in person. I think, you know, after the year or so that we've had in so many ways, the AAPI community, the Jewish, like, we just, you know, all of the racial justice issues, for the community to come together and say, like, San Diego is no place for hate. It's not acceptable here. You know, and even if the commission, I don't know, wants to have a booth to share what the commission does for people to become more aware that they can come to meetings or make public comment, we can maybe think about that. So
that sounds great. If you could put us down for that, that would be terrific. And I also was thinking that we should add that to the calendar that Vice Chair Canizales has created, and that could be our October activity. And wouldn't it be great if many of the commissioners could come together and walk together against hate.
Would be awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
And you know, it poured last time we walked, and everybody still remembers Reverend Brown kicking us off and saying, really, it's just liquid sunshine. And that got everybody in the right spirit. So thank you.
Oh, I love it. All right. And let's see, going down the list, Commissioner Molig.
So we had a huge win this week. Trans Family Support Services serves alongside many other LGBTQ youth serving organizations in a community leadership council specifically for youth serving organizations, San Diego Pride, the center, the North County Center. And we just released yesterday via a press release, a standards of care document for schools. In caring for LGBTQ students. It's like 35 pages, super comprehensible. And you know, because of our work in Poway Unified, I've already heard that like multiple people were bringing it to other people at the district to say, have you seen this? Have you seen this? So I can put our website in the chat, transfamilysos.org, go to resources in schools, and you can find that document that was created by the community.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Do we have a report from Commissioner Razi Jafari?
No, nothing for me this month.
Commissioner Rizzo?
Just want to pass along again my thanks to Farhat for all her excellent work, and my welcome to Reverend Dr. Brown, who's already keeping us in line on motions and other things to consider. So, and welcome to Tyler Duncan. Really looking forward to working with everyone.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas?
Sure, I'll share two things. One is that at the council meeting where the city council was taking up the budgets for the business improvement districts, Stephen Whitburn put forward an amendment that would make our funding hinge on anti-harassment and inclusivity training, which was embraced by all of the business improvement districts very strongly. We have a group called the Bid Alliance where we all meet, and we set forth some parameters by which we're going to be operating going forward. And so this is a great way that council as well as the business community is moving forward to make everything a little bit more inclusive and better for everybody here in San Diego. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm going to reach out to Farhat, who's done an incredible job working with us, but on the immigrant and refugee issue, we are launching this week our marketplace at the Fair at 44. And it is to give immigrant and refugees, entrepreneurs a leg up into the business community, move them out of the informal economy into the formal economy, and help them with services. So there's definitely ways that we can work together with the IRC, who's our partner in this, in moving this forward. And I would appreciate your help.
Yes, please, Commissioner Thomas, reach out anytime.
Thank you.
Sounds great, and so perfectly aligned with welcoming San Diego. Fantastic. Commissioner, I think actually that is all of our commissioners. Did I miss? Oh, Detsky Weil, my apologies.
Oh, no, you got me, but I just wanted to ask, has there been any discussion about getting back together as a group in person?
That was something that was brought up with the chairs of all the boards and commissions, and it has been brought up. There is no information about when that will happen. But as soon as I hear, I will let you know, because I am dying to see all of your beautiful faces in person. Hopefully it will be soon.
Yeah, I would like to say that I like the idea of a hybrid so that
Yes.
people could attend.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic has been that Zoom or web-based conferencing has made so many meetings much more accessible. And even if you are not in the location, that you're able to join. So yes, I think a hybrid model would be fantastic. With that, I will move to our last item, which is to adjourn. Thank you all for your contributions tonight. We got through an important and robust agenda. Our next meeting is July 21st at 5:30, and I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Good night. The meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful evening and weekend. Well, I guess it's not even the weekend. Week ahead.
Good night.
I'll
Bye,
be reaching out to you tomorrow.
everyone.
Good
And
night.
thank you again, Farhad, and welcome, Reverend
Thank
Brown.
you. I'll be reaching out to you tomorrow, Madam Chair, if that's okay. Okay. And
Sure.
Farhad, thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Good
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all.